Walz made himself fair game, since his only attack was that the other guy was weird. Because everyone is weird, the more you get to know them. It's why marriage is a commitment. Over time, both spouses realize we're all bat crazy. But there's weird and there's dangerously insane. And that's thinking children can decide to have themselves castrated. And that's Tim Walz. Kamala Harris has created her own scented candle. And just like her, it gets lit every night. She's a drunk.
In a razor-sharp laugh-out-loud segment, Greg Gutfeld unleashed a comedic firestorm on Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, torching their political credibility with a wit that hit harder than a viral meme. Armed with sarcasm that could cut glass, Gutfeld shredded Harris's infamous word salads and Walz's featherweight leadership style like a verbal wrecking ball. No stone was left unturned. Harris's nervous chuckles and Walz's endless task forces took direct hits in a so savage, it left political nonsense reeling. Gutfeld didn't just deliver a critique. He served up a reality check, wrapped in punchlines that'll echo long after the laughter fades.
CBS's 60 Minutes was caught editing their interview with Kamala Harris to make her look better. It's a shocking ethical lapse. Mike Wallace must be rolling in his grave. Not over this, though, but that his son is Chris Wallace.
I think it's very important, as you have heard from so many incredible leaders, for us at every moment in time, and certainly this one, to see the moment in time in which we exist and are present, and to be able to contextualize it, to understand where we exist in the history and in the moment as it relates not only to the past but the future.
You know, that's some bad weed. Generally, when people get high, they actually have some interesting thoughts. Not her.
Gutfeld's savage takedown leaves Harris and Walz reeling. Greg Gutfeld didn't just walk onto the stage, he stormed it like a comedic tornado fueled by pure wit and zero mercy. With a grin that promised pain and sarcasm sharper than a switchblade, he zeroed in on Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, the political duo doomed to face his wrath. This wasn't a roast. It was a full-on demolition derby. Gutfeld tore through Harris's verbal stumbles and Walz's leadership flops with the precision of a stand-up surgeon, leaving their credibility in tatters. By the time he dropped the mic, the political landscape looked like a Minnesota highway, in the dead of winter riddled with potholes and begging for repair.
Kamala remained a constant, then what impacted the polls? And it's driven by identity politics.
We're going to cook today.
Okay.
Is an Indian recipe.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
you are Indian.
Yes.
And you all helped us win in 2020, and we're going to do it again in 2024.
What would Trump have to say about Kamala's qualifications?
Well, you know, she's flip-flopping, Greg. I mean, these are flip-flops. And Indian people and blacks wear flip-flops, which is good, but...
Greg Gutfeld kicked off his comedic carnage by targeting Vice President Kamala Harris, whose resume screams career bureaucrat but whose speeches stumble like a GPS with a bad signal. With razor-sharp precision, Gutfeld skewered the bizarre cadence of her public addresses, those meandering, stilted sentences that twist like a freestyle rap gone wrong, as if she's swallowed a thesaurus and forgotten how to spit it out. In Gutfeld's words, every time Harris speaks, you're left wondering if it's policy or just poetry scribbled during a blackout.
One of them, Politico says, is like Waltz's wide eyes showed his passion and emotional intensity. Can we show that? There is his wide eyes. That humans would widen their eyes to convey that danger is close. What emotion are you getting from that? Sorry.
Greg Gutfeld turned up the heat, likening Kamala Harris's speech style to someone who just discovered metaphors, and now slathers them on everything like an overzealous chef with a spice rack. But it's her substance or lack thereof that Gutfeld savaged next. He roasted her ability to tackle issues, calling it shallower than a phoenix puddle. Ask her about inflation, he quipped, and it's like handing your taxes to a cat. Lots of noise, zero results. Harris, he jabbed, dances around problems as if they're glass landmines. tossing out nervous giggles and word salads so jumbled they're begging for a dressing.
With Walz, it's hard to even bring him up. He has a resting snitch face. You know? I mean, he forfeited his man card during COVID and the riots. And you're right. And also, at that diner, of course, he left early. So don't you find it weird that for a terrifying threat to democracy that Trump is, not a single interviewer in his history has approached him with trepidation?
Greg Gutfeld kept the comedic blows coming, painting Kamala Harris's attempts at clarity as a TED Talk gone rogue delivered by someone who clearly skipped the rehearsal. He skewered her notorious knack for dodging tough questions, comparing her interview style to a dodgeball champ facing off against reality itself. The second facts fly her way, Gutfeld quipped. She's ducking behind phrases like, let's be clear, then proceeding to be anything but, it's like tuning into a cooking show, he jabbed. Only to watch the host explain lasagna with nothing but cloud metaphors and nervous giggles, an interpretive dance of pure confusion. Then Gutfeld zeroed in on Harris's handling of the border crisis, a role she seems to treat like a gym membership, technically hers, but she's never there. He roasted her for approaching the border like a fairy tale, as if ignoring it might magically fix the chaos. She's more likely to visit Mars than McAllen, he cracked, torching her absence. And when she does touch on immigration, Gutfeld likened it to a weather report for a storm in another country's zero urgency. All fluff, and a masterclass in missing the point.
I want to see this in slow motion. You'll see Walz extends his hand to his wife. She grabs it. They shake. He pulls her close and then goes in for that non-friction hug, all the while still shaking her hand. I wish there was a word to describe that. Oh, yeah, weird.
Just when the studio audience thought Gutfeld's wit couldn't cut deeper, he swung his comedic sledgehammer at Tim Walz, crowning him the court jester to Kamala Harris's Queen of Confusion. Gutfeld painted Walz as a leader who strolls into a crisis clutching a clipboard and saunters out with a shrug, leaving chaos in his wake. Under Walz's watch, Minnesota morphed from a proud state into a bureaucratic circus, and Gutfeld torched his lockdown policies with the fury of someone who endured every Zoom call, mask mandate, and contradictory edict. He dubbed Walz the captain of the SS maybe, aimlessly drifting between guidelines and restrictions like a DJ spinning tracks nobody requested. Gyms shuttered one day, open for wrestling the next, provided you're wearing oven mitts. Health policy by a committee of squirrels on Red Bull, Gutfeld quipped. Then came the crime wave, and Gutfeld didn't hold back. He accused Walz of treating Minnesota's spiking violence like a pesky rumor he hoped would vanish. As major cities became hotbeds of unrest, Walz's response, more meetings, more press releases, and the occasional look of mild concern like a man watching a fire spread while debating whether to call 911. Gutfeld's takedown left Walz's leadership looking like a masterclass in indecision, served with a side of shrugs.
As a teacher, my number one responsibility in the classroom is the safety, security, and belongingness of every single child in that room. These are children my son's age, a fourth grader, a 10-year-old who just wants to go to the bathroom. And their identity is they are male or female, and they just go in that bathroom and use it. End quote. Sounds so folksy, you know? Belongingness. Yeah, they'll be belonging in therapy with this guy at the helm.
Greg Gutfeld, not Goodfeld, kept the heat on, shredding Tim Walz as a man who read the leadership manual backward, starting with blame everyone else and skipping take action entirely. Gutfeld's zinger, watching Walz face the media, is like a substitute teacher fumbling through nuclear physics for a kindergarten class. Awkward, pointless, and utterly lost. With a tone devoid of conviction and the charisma of a soggy mop, Walz doesn't lead, he lingers. He doesn't decide, he delays. And when chaos erupts, Gutfeld quipped, Walz acts like someone else hid the fuse, leaving him blinking in the dark with the vision of a bat in broad daylight. Not done yet. Gutfeld swung back to Kamala Harris with the precision of a roastmaster on a vendetta. He dug into her tenure as California's Attorney General, torching her reform policies as less about justice and more about chasing headlines. Harris, he jabbed, has a memory for her past positions that shifts like a chameleon with Wi-Fi, constantly updating to suit whoever's in the room. Gutfeld's relentless takedown left her political persona exposed as a shape-shifting headline, hungry mirage.
A question of what can be unburdened by what has been.
We see what can be unburdened by what has been.
To see what can be unburdened by what has been.
Believing in what can be unburdened by what has been.
What can be unburdened by what has been? What can be unburdened by what has been? What can be unburdened by what has been?
Having faith in what can be unburdened by what has been.
See what can be unburdened by what has been. To see what can be unburdened by what has been.
You know, if Kamala gets dementia, it would be an improvement.
Greg Gutfeld kept the comedic onslaught rolling, zeroing in on Kamala Harris's cringeworthy public appearances where her nervous laughter erupts at the most awkward moments. Like a glitchy app buffering mid-crisis, her giggles could power a small wind farm, Gutfeld jabbed, noting they flare up precisely when she realizes she's out of answers. He nailed her with a killer line. Ask Kamala a yes or no question, and you trigger a Rube Goldberg machine, complicated, noisy, and totally swiveling back to Tim Walz. Gutfeld had a field day roasting the Minnesota governor's obsession with task forces and panels. Every issue, from policing to potholes, gets buried under another study, another committee, another taxpayer stall tactic. Walz handles problems like most people handle laundry. Gutfeld quipped, piling it up and hoping someone else deals with it. He tore into Walz's educational priorities, highlighting slipping academic scores, while millions poured into programs that sound like rejected TED Talks. Walz, Gutfeld charged, is more about slogans than solutions, dressing up bureaucratic failures in flowery buzzwords. Education under Walz. He zinged as a political science experiment gone horribly wrong. Kids aren't learning to read. They're memorizing catchphrases. As the roast blazed on, Gutfeld paired their flaws like a sommelier of dysfunction. Harris's incoherence and Walz's indecision. Two sides of the same flailing coin, spinning in a masterclass of political missteps.
With this administration and the spouse swapping of the VP and the president, we saw it before. Like, Dr. Jill didn't kiss Joe like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And now he couldn't wait to get that full embrace. It wasn't a bro hug, it was a yo hug. And he put his wife in the friend zone.
Yes.
It's always that must have been a fun car ride home.
Yeah.
Why can't you hug me like her husband? I mean, it's weird.
It is weird. You know, Joey, I think that it's okay to take Walz's picadillos, if you call it, apart, because remember, he broke the seal by calling Vance weird, and we're all weird, including him.
Yeah, we're very weird. I'm weird.
Greg Gutfeld cranked up the heat, gleefully lumping himself into the chaos with a cheeky, "Yeah, we're all weird." He painted Kamala Harris as a master of empty speeches, stumbling through them like she's reading a teleprompter stuck on shuffle, while Tim Walz governs as if he's flipping a coin he lost mid-together. Gutfeld zinked. They're the political equivalent of a slow Wi-Fi signal, always buffering, never loading. He skewered their combined influence with surgical precision. Harris, the vice president who occasionally pops out of her echo chamber to serve half-baked inspirational platitudes. And Walz, the governor managing Minnesota like he thinks leadership comes with a microwave timer. Gutfeld spun a hilarious mental image of the duo tackling a crisis together, Harris whipping up a word salad so tangled it'd fry an AI, while Walz nods, launches a task force, and sneaks out through the gift shop. Their public personas didn't escape his wrath either. He mocked Harris's media image, a fragile Jenga tower of curated interviews, friendly headlines, and canned empathy, ready to topple at the slightest push. Walz, Gutfeld called him a walking 404 error, a beige blur of blandness trying to run a state. Neither seems built to lead, but both, he quipped, are Olympic-level experts at dodging accountability. The audience lost it when Gutfeld likened Harris's vice presidency to a group project where she skips every meeting but still claims the credit, while Walz runs Minnesota like he's stuck waiting for a YouTube tutorial. It was a comedic knockout, leaving their political facades in hilarious ruins.
Kamala Harris is the Democrat candidate for president of the United States. I'll give you a second to come to. The border czar who couldn't find our southern border on a map of Texas now wants to be America's commander-in-chief. Kamala couldn't lead a campfire sing-along, let alone the country's armed forces. But does that matter? not to the media. Now, they would like this framed as a team sport battle, left versus right, Democrat versus Republican. But in reality, it's the media narrative machine versus reality.
Greg Gutfeld landed his final blows with devastating flair, likening Kamala Harris to an automated voicemail friendly, vague, and utterly useless in a crisis. Tim Walz. He's managing Minnesota's messes with the urgency of a sloth on sedatives. Gutfeld didn't need to shout or embellish. The absurdity of their records did the heavy lifting. Harris's baffling sound bites, Walz's policy, ping-pong, soaring crime rates, economic chaos, crumbling education, empty speeches, staged photo ops, and press conferences engineered to say nothing. Gutfeld simply held up a mirror, and the reflection was pure comedic gold. By the time he was done, Harris's platitudes and Walz's indecision stood naked, stripped of their polished spin and served up on a silver platter of sarcasm. This wasn't just a roast, it was a deconstruction, exposing the hollow core where substance should have been. Yet Gutfeld left the door ajar, knowing the material will keep coming. As long as Harris keeps dishing out riddles and Walz governs like he's deciphering invisible ink, the circus will only grow. With Gutfeld parked in the front row, every press conference, headline, and policy flop is just another punchline waiting to land.
VP made her first major speech last night since Trump took office, and it was another classic ball of verbal vomit. Here she is referencing a viral video of elephants. Watch.
Who saw that video from a couple of weeks ago? The one of the elephants at the San Diego Zoo during the earthquake?
Greg Gutfeld reloaded his comedic arsenal and took aim again, nailing Kamala Harris for her knack for showing up late to every political moment and lingering even longer, only to leave without a single memorable word. If she got a Netflix special, he quipped it'd be called Delayed Arrival, starring zero substance. Every Harris appearance, Gutfeld jabbed. Feels like a dress rehearsal for a show that never happens. She struts on stage with keynote swagger, unleashes a labyrinth of metaphors, tosses in awkward laughs, then vanishes like a magician allergic to commitment. Meanwhile, Gutfeld turned his sights on Tim Walz, accusing him of turning Minnesota into a masterclass on running a state into the ground without breaking a sweat. He roasted Walz's governance as playing defense in a game nobody's watching, joking that the governor wakes up daily to check California's failures just to ensure Minnesota's are slightly worse. It's not leadership. Gutfeld zinged its imitation mixed with hesitation, packaged as progress. His punchlines hit like sniper shots, leaving Harris and Walz's political facades riddled with holes.
I speak of former VP nominee Tim Walz. He joined Beto O'Rourke at a Texas town hall last night, and the estrogen levels were enough to give Chuck Norris menstrual cramps. I wonder, is our strength our diversity?
Our strength is our diversity. We've been talking about this for years as a country of immigrants, and we let them define the issue on immigration. We let them define the issue on DEI, and we let them define what woke is.
Greg Gutfeld delivered the knockout punch, slamming Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as the poster children for style over substance. Political gift boxes wrapped in shiny paper, but empty inside. He dubbed Harris's laugh a national mystery, and Walz's vision for the future an urban legend. If Walz announced a bold new initiative, Gutfeld quipped, you'd need a translator, a decoder ring, and 6 months to figure out what it meant. He painted a vivid scene, Harris at the podium, confidently spouting verbal jazz that sounds profound until you replay it and realize it's nonsense, while Walz stands beside her, clutching a binder stuffed with buzzwords, lost in his own script. Together, they're a duet with no melody, talking plenty, saying nothing. The best part, Gutfeld's comedic well is far from dry, with a treasure trove of absurdities, broken set bites, and unkept promises, still ripe for turning into comedy gold.